He scoffed that the elite sniper range was for warriors, not the cleaning crew. He had no idea the woman replacing targets was the most decorated shooter on the entire base, and he was about to be her lesson. The heat in the Mojave Desert was a physical entity. It shimmered in waves off the cracked earth of the elite weapons testing center, a place where the air itself tasted of scorched metal and creosote. In this crucible, a group of Navy SEAL candidates, their sun-baked skin glistening with sweat, watched a lone figure downrange. She was replacing targets, her movements economical and precise. "Hey, sweetheart, you lost." The voice, dripping with condescension, belonged to a candidate whose call sign, stitched onto his cap, read Jester. He was the alpha of this pack, a young man from a storied military family, and his arrogance was as palpable as the 110-degree heat. The gift shop's back at the main gate. This is a live-fire range for actual warfighters, not a tourist stop. A chorus of low, appreciative chuckles rippled through the group. The woman didn't flinch. Her name tape simply read Morgan. She wore a pair of khaki coveralls, faintly stained with gun oil, over her standard-issue uniform. Her hair was pulled back into an immaculate French braid, a detail of discipline that went unnoticed by the men who saw only a menial task being performed by someone they deemed insignificant. Her hands, clad in simple work gloves, continued their methodical work, pulling the spent, bullet-riddled paper from its frame, stacking it neatly, then sliding a fresh sheet into place with a crisp snap. She was an island of focused calm in a sea of testosterone-fueled bravado. High above, inside a climate-controlled observation room shielded by one-way glass, retired Navy Captain Wallace watched the scene unfold through a pair of high-powered Steiner binoculars. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles and scars earned over a 30-year career. He saw Jester puff out his chest, performing for his audience. He saw the woman's posture, the unwavering straightness of her spine as she knelt to align a new target. He noted the way her boots were bloused, not with the lazy tuck of a contractor, but with the razor-sharp fold of a soldier who had done it 10,000 times. He recognized the coiled spring of potential energy disguised as simple utility. But he said nothing. Not yet. Jester, emboldened by her silence, took another step forward. Seriously, he drawled, gesturing vaguely at the state-of-the-art Cadex Defense CDX-40 Shadow sniper rifle resting on its bipod in his lane. "We're qualifying on this beast today. It's a big boy gun. You probably shouldn't even be out here without double-ear pro. Wouldn't want you to get scared by the noise." Morgan finished her work on the last target. She rose in a single, fluid motion, the stack of used paper held perfectly level in one hand. She walked past the line of smirking candidates without a sideways glance, her boots making soft, rhythmic crunches in the gravel. She was headed for the small supply shed at the edge of the range, an anonymous figure melting back into the shimmering heat. The show, for now, was over. Captain Wallace let her reach the supply shed before his voice, gravelly and amplified by the PA system, crackled across the range with absolute authority. "All right, candidates, listen up. Qualification course is live. You know the drill. 5 targets, unknown distances between 800 and 1,200 yards. You have 60 seconds from the first round fired to engage all 5. Jester, you're up. Show them how it's done." The smirk returned to Jester's face. This was his arena. He swaggered to his rifle, the custom-built Cadex looking less like a tool and more like a trophy. He settled behind it, adjusting the stock against his shoulder, his eye finding the scope. He exuded the supreme confidence of a man who had never truly failed at anything important. But as he looked through the optic, his posture stiffened. "What the hell?" he muttered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Something was wrong. He fiddled impatiently with the parallax knob, then twisted the windage turret with a frustrated grunt. The mirage from the heat was a river of distortion, but this was something else. The reticle felt off. He took a deep, theatrical breath, centered the crosshairs on the most distant target, and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle was immense, a sonic boom that echoed off the distant hills. But a full second later, a puff of sand and dust erupted a good 10 feet to the left of the steel plate. A clean miss. Jester's face flushed a deep, angry red. "No way," he hissed. He cycled the bolt aggressively, chambering another round. He fired again, more hastily this time. Another miss, this one even wider. Frustration boiled over into rage. "This rifle is completely foobar," he yelled, shoving himself away from the weapon so hard his chair scraped backward. "The zero is gone. Which one of you idiots dropped my scope? There's no way to make these shots. It's impossible." The range, once buzzing with anticipation, fell into a tense, uncomfortable silence. The only sound was the desert wind whistling past the target stands. Jester stood there, fuming, the architect of his own public humiliation, blaming his tools for his own failure. Then, Captain Wallace's voice returned, calm and cutting as a surgeon's scalpel. "Petty Officer Jester, stand down." A wave of confusion washed over the candidates. Jester turned, bewildered, looking up toward the unseen figure in the control room. "Captain, with all due respect, the weapon is compromised. It's an equipment failure." The response was immediate and final. "I said, stand down." Specialist Morgan, front and center. To the firing line. The name echoed across the range, causing a ripple of confusion. Every head turned towards the small supply shed. Who was Specialist Morgan? They looked at each other, then back at the woman who had been replacing their targets. Her. Jester was aghast. "Captain, she's range maintenance." The unspoken command in the captain's silence, however, was absolute. Under the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes and the unseen glare from the tower, Jester grudgingly, humiliatingly, stepped aside. Morgan emerged from the shed and walked toward the firing line. Her pace was steady, unhurried. She said nothing. Her expression was a perfect mask of neutrality. As she approached the Cadex rifle, a transformation occurred. The weapon, which had seemed awkward and unwieldy in Jester's frustrated grasp, now looked like a natural extension of her body the moment her hands touched it. She ignored the bipod. In a move of supreme confidence and stability that made the jaws of the other candidates drop, she sank into a kneeling firing position, a far more difficult and fundamentally stable stance to master than the prone position Jester had used. Her core strength was immediately, shockingly apparent. Her hands moved with a quiet, practiced sureness. She didn't look through the scope at first. Instead, her gloved finger found the parallax knob. She gave it a minute, almost imperceptible turn, a quarter-millimeter adjustment that Jester, in his flustered rage, had completely overshot. It was a correction born of feel and thousands of hours of practice, not frantic guesswork. She settled in, her cheek finding the stock. She took a single, slow breath, in and out, her body becoming as still as the ancient rocks surrounding them. Her finger found the trigger. Crack. The report was sharp, clean. On the monitor, a perfect red dot appeared in the dead center of the 800-yard target. Before the echo had even begun to fade, her hand worked the bolt with fluid, mechanical efficiency. SHKCHK. Another shot. A second target, this one at nearly 1,000 yards, flashed red. SHKCHK. Another shot. A third. Two more followed in a rapid, rhythmic succession that sounded less like 5 distinct shots and more like a single, controlled burst of percussive thunder. Crack. 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 5 shots. 5 targets. 5 perfect bullseyes. The last brass casing ejected, spinning like a golden insect in the sunlight before landing with a soft hiss in the warm sand. A profound, deafening silence descended upon the range. The only sound was the wind and the faint, rhythmic tink, 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 of the rifle's barrel cooling. The row of SEAL candidates, who moments before had been a wall of arrogant smirks, now stood frozen, their mouths agape in slack-jawed disbelief. Liam, a younger candidate standing in the back, felt the hair on his arms stand up. The collective ego of the entire class had been vaporized in less than 15 seconds. Jester stared, his eyes wide, flicking from the impossibly perfect grouping on the monitor to the rifle now resting silently in Morgan's hands, and back to her calm, impassive face. His own failure was now cast in the humiliating shadow of her effortless perfection. The foundation of his confidence had been shattered by the very person he had dismissed as a janitor. "No way," he breathed, the words barely a whisper. "That's not possible." He wasn't just questioning the event. He was questioning his entire perception of the world. The sound of boots crunching on gravel announced the arrival of Captain Wallace. He had descended from his perch and was walking with a deliberate, unyielding purpose across the range, his gaze locked on Morgan. The candidates instinctively snapped to attention as he approached, their bodies rigid with a new kind of fear, the fear of judgment from a man who had just witnessed their collective failure in character. The captain walked right past Jester and the others, ignoring them as if they were part of the landscape. He stopped directly in front of Morgan. He didn't speak to her. Instead, he turned to face his trainees, his eyes sweeping over them with a look of profound disappointment that was more punishing than any shout. He held up a small, ruggedized military tablet. With a tap of his calloused finger, he projected its screen onto the large tactical display board next to the firing line. An official service record flickered to life, its glowing text stark against the harsh sunlight. "You see this woman?" he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute command. "You see the name Morgan on her uniform? You looked at her, and you made an assumption. You decided she was here to staple paper to cardboard. You measured her worth by your own ignorant, arrogant standards." He tapped the screen again, highlighting a section of text. "Let me tell you who you just insulted. Let me tell you who you handed your rifle to." The camera zoomed in on the display. The candidates read in stunned silence. Specialist Alice Morgan. United States Army. Former member, 75th Ranger Regiment. Distinguished Honor Graduate, U.S. Army Sniper School. Current record holder, longest confirmed combat shot, Operation Resolute Support, 1,824 meters. Recipient, Silver Star W/Valor for actions taken during a sandstorm ambush, where a single, perfectly placed shot neutralized a heavy machine gun nest, saving her entire platoon from being overrun. She is not range maintenance, the captain's voice cut through the silence. She is an instructor and master gunsmith on loan to us from the Army Marksmanship Unit. She has forgotten more about this rifle system before breakfast than you boys will learn in your entire careers. The reason Mr. Jester's scope was off is because Specialist Morgan had just finished recalibrating it for extreme distance after it was improperly serviced. That tiny adjustment she made was to return it to its standard 100-yard zero, a basic procedure he was too panicked to even consider. The captain then turned his back on his stunned trainees and faced Specialist Morgan. In the silent, heavy air of the range, he drew himself up to his full height. He executed the sharpest, most formal salute of his 40-year career, a gesture that crossed service branches and ranks, a gesture of profound, unequivocal respect from one warrior to another. "Specialist Morgan," he said, his voice now devoid of its earlier anger, replaced by a deep reverence. "On behalf of Naval Special Warfare, my sincere apologies for the ignorance of my trainees. It is an honor to have you. Welcome to Coronado." Morgan's expression remained neutral, but she gave a short, acknowledging nod, accepting the salute. She stood, cleared the rifle with a few deft, practiced movements, and handed it not to Jester, but directly to Captain Wallace. "Zero is confirmed, Captain," was all she said. Her voice was steady, professional, and completely devoid of triumph. With that, she turned and walked back toward the supply shed, her job done. But the story was just beginning. It spread through the base like a shockwave. Before the sun had even begun to set, every SEAL, every instructor, and every support staff member knew what had happened. The firing lane where she had stood was already being referred to by a new name, Morgan's Line. The incident became more than just barracks gossip. It became a catalyst for change. Petty Officer Jester was a different man after that day. He was officially reprimanded and lost his position as class leader. The swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet, watchful humility. He was seen later that evening in the armory, not barking orders, but meticulously cleaning rifles by himself, his movements slow and contemplative. The lesson had been delivered not with a lecture, but with a single, undeniable demonstration of competence. His leadership style transformed. He began to listen more than he spoke. He started to see the people around him not as a supporting cast for his own story, but as professionals with their own skills and knowledge. He treated the cooks in the galley, the mechanics in the motor pool, and the clerks in administration with a newfound respect born from the humbling realization that true expertise wears many uniforms. A week later, after his duties cleaning the base latrines were complete, he sought out Specialist Morgan. He found her not on the range, but in a small, quiet workshop, calibrating optics with the precision of a watchmaker. He didn't make a public spectacle of it. He simply stood before her, came to attention, and said, his voice clear and steady, "Ma'am, I was wrong. I was arrogant and disrespectful. Thank you for the lesson." Morgan looked up from her work, her eyes meeting his. She didn't gloat or offer false platitudes. She gave him the only kind of response a quiet professional knows. "We all have something to learn, Petty Officer," she said calmly. "Focus on your sight picture and your breath control. The rest will follow." It was both technical advice and a profound philosophy. Her way of closing one chapter and opening the door for his growth. Years passed. Petty Officer Jester was now Chief Petty Officer Jester, a seasoned SEAL team leader, his face etched with the lines of experience from deployments to the world's most dangerous places. He stood before a new group of fresh-faced SEAL candidates, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. They were in a briefing room, and behind Drake, hanging on the wall in a simple black frame, was a single paper target. It was faded and worn, but 5 distinct holes were clustered in a group no bigger than a quarter, precisely in the center. Drake pointed a thumb at the frame. "Look at this," he commanded, his voice calm and authoritative. "Every class that comes through here learns this story. This is a reminder. It's a reminder that the most dangerous person on any battlefield is not the loudest one. It's not the one with the most patches or the biggest ego." He paused, letting his words sink in. "This is a reminder that competence doesn't need to shout. It's a reminder that you must earn respect through your actions, not demand it with your voice." The woman who made those 5 shots was underestimated by everyone on the range that day, myself included. Never, ever make that mistake. Your assumptions are your biggest enemy. The legend had become doctrine. Specialist Alice Morgan never sought recognition. She never mentioned the incident again. She simply continued to do her job with a quiet, relentless competence that elevated everyone around her. Her legacy wasn't carved in stone or memorialized with a plaque. It was forged in the changed behavior of a young officer who became a better leader. It lived on in the institutional folklore of a new generation of warriors who learned to value skill over swagger. Morgan's story proves that true authority comes from capability, not a title. Have you ever witnessed a quiet professional like her in your own life? Share your story in the comments below, and let's celebrate these unsung heroes. If you believe actions speak louder than words, hit subscribe and share this story. In the comments, please, show respect for each other's experiences. Let's build a community that values true strength. Thanks for watching.